Shabbat Shalom. I'm Cantor David Proser of Kempsville Conservative Synagogue, Kehillat Bet HaMidrash in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And this is our Torah commentary for Shabbat, Saturday, December 5th, 2020, corresponding to the 19th day of the month of Kislev, 5781. We thank Rabbi Adam Rosenbaum, Rabbi Joseph Prauser, Rabbi Michael Gold, and the United Synagogue Torah Spark series for their various teachings and publications on this week's Parsha. This Shabbat, December 5th, we read the Parsha of Vayishlach in the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshit. It begins on page 198 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 122 of the Hertz. Finally free after serving his father-in-law Lavan and getting close to home, Yaakov anticipates a tense reunion with his estranged brother Esav. When he had last seen Esav 20 years earlier, Esav had wanted to kill him. Yaakov dispatches messengers to his brother. When they return, Yaakov learns of a new challenge. Esav is approaching him with a force of 400 men at his side. He assumes his brother's intent is hostile, and with good reason. The last time he saw Esav, he was threatening Yaakov's life. Yaakov springs into action in three ways. He divides his family and flocks into two separate camps, hoping that at least half of his entourage will survive if they are attacked. He prays to God for safety, and he sends his brother substantial gifts. Sending his wives and children across the river Yavok, Yaakov spends the night alone. No matter how much he prepared for his brother's approach, nothing could have prepared him for his midnight encounter. During the night, he is met by and wrestles with a mysterious being. Was it a man? Was it an angel? Was it his conscience? They wrestle until daybreak. Yaakov proves to be stronger, but not before the opponent strains his hip socket. Victorious nonetheless, Yaakov demands a blessing, and the unknown being changes Yaakov's name to Yisrael, Israel, because he had striven with beings divine and human and prevailed. As an aside here, our Midrash links Yaakov's hip injury to the prohibition against eating an animal's sciatic nerve, which leads to the practice known as trabeling meat as part of the kosher meat preparation process. Limping back to his camp, Yaakov sees Esav and his party approach. But instead of attacking, Esav arrives with open arms, kisses Yaakov, and speaks of journeying together. Yaakov remains polite but cautious, insisting that Esav accept his gifts and asking to travel behind Esav's party rather than together because of the slow pace that traveling with wives, children, and flock would cause. Although he at first declined, Esav accepts Yaakov's substantial gifts, and the two brothers part ways peacefully. Yaakov and Esav will reunite only once more to bury their father, Yitzchak, Isaac, when he dies at the age of 180. Yaakov heads to the north of Canaan, the land we know as Israel today, and purchases a plot of land near Shechem. Its crown prince, also named Shechem, the son of the Hivite chief Hamor, abducts and rapes Yaakov's daughter Dinah. Shechem desires to marry Dinah, and Hamor asks Yaakov for a diplomatic arrangement, proposing that the Hivite and Israelite clans marry one another. This would permit Shechem to marry Dinah, for whom they offer an exorbitant bride price. Yaakov's sons duplicitously consent to this arrangement and advise Yaakov to approve the request, provided that the Hivite males be circumcised. The terms are accepted. Little does Yaakov know that two of his sons, Shimon and Levi, plan to slaughter the Hivites and pillage their city as they are recovering from their circumcisions. To Yaakov's expression of dismay, Shimon and Levi respond indignantly, "Should our sister be treated like a whore?" God tells Yaakov to go to Bethel and build an altar. Yaakov does so and expresses his gratitude to God at the very spot where he had prayed for divine protection 20 years earlier. This was the site where he stopped on his way to Haran, dreamt about the angels ascending and descending the ladder, had his initial encounter with God, and erected a monument there. God appears to Yaakov again, confirms his new name, and once again reaffirms the covenant. Rivka's nurse Deborah dies and is buried. While heading south from Bethel, Yaakov's beloved wife, Rachel, dies while giving birth to her second son and is buried in a roadside grave near Bethlehem. She calls her son Ben-Oni, which means son of my troubles, but Yaakov wisely and sensitively changes it to Benjamin, child of strength. Yaakov's son Reuven consorts with his father's concubine Bilhah. This unseemly, perhaps politically motivated liaison is reported in a single verse. The traditional cantillation of this passage, Genesis 35:22, joins this verse to the one immediately following to dispense with the salacious matter as delicately and expeditiously as possible. Yaakov travels to Hebron, where Yitzchak dies at the age of 180 and is buried by Yaakov and Esav in a memorial tribute reminiscent of Yitzchak's and Ishmael's coming together to bury Avraham. The Parsha concludes with a genealogical list of both Yaakov's and Esav's descendants and the family histories of the people of Seir, among whom Esav settled. The Haftorah from this week is the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verses 1 to 21, beginning on page 222 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 137 of the Hertz. This Haftorah consists of the entire brief book of Obadiah, the prophecy of a message of judgment and promise. According to the Eitz Chaim commentary, the judgment focuses on the nation of Edom, whose downfall is proclaimed for their treachery against their brother Israel during the siege and destruction of the first temple. The theme of promise is addressed to Israel, calling on the house of Jacob. On the day of doom, they shall wreak judgment on Mount Esav. The renewal of the ancient rivalry between Yaakov, the nation of Israel, and Esav, now the nation of Edom, will again result in the loss of the elder brother's patrimony. The relationship between the Haftorah and this week's Torah Parsha is the reflection of the opposition between the two brothers in the story of Yaakov and Esav. The bitter enmity of the Edomites to Israel was particularly inexcusable because of their common descent. In the Torah reading, Yaakov and Esav separate in peace, with each brother going to his own separate land. The Haftorah takes us to near the end of the biblical period, after Israel was exiled from its homeland, and Edom participated in the downfall of the nation. The prophet indicts the nation of the elder brother with duplicity and arraigns him on charges of deceit. The roles of deceiver and deceived are now reversed, with fatal consequences for Edom. The prophet predicts Edom's destruction and disposition. Verse 21 has become an integral part of the daily morning liturgy. V'yalu Moshiim b'har Tzion lishpot et har Esav, v'hoito l'Hashem hamalucha. For liberators shall march up Mount Zion to wreak judgment on Mount Esav, and dominion shall be the Lord's. On a side note, Edom has become a term used to identify all nations that aided in the destruction and persecution of Israel, so naturally it also applied to Rome. As a result, the prophecy of Obadiah fostered hopes for an end to all brutal domination of Israel and a resumption of national religious service. Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe, to like, to hit the notification bell so you'll know when we post new content, and feel free to leave comments below. Shabbat Shalom.